Hello, everyone, and welcome to another incredible episode of Empowered Conversations, where I have amazing conversations with extraordinary people who are out in the world doing beautiful things in service to others, as well as all around living their best lives. And that is none other than my guest today, Vernessa Roberts. I am so excited to bring her on. She is so amazing. I was on her All Things Authentic podcast a couple weeks ago, and that was so much fun. But I'm going to tell you all about Vernessa. Dr. Vernessa Roberts is a licensed marriage and family therapist, author, and professor. She has a private practice in Sacramento, California, where she works with individuals as well as couples. Her passion areas are shame, self worth, and authenticity. Huge. Love it. Vernessa is also the host of the podcast I was telling y'all about, All Things Authentic, where she has all these conversations that center around our desire and need for authenticity. Her goal is to help others overcome feelings of shame when they arise, realize the worth that exists within them, and break free from the expectations of others and society. It takes courage to reveal the unpacked versions of ourselves, but Vernessa believes that our best self is the authentic version, not the packaged version. So everybody, whoop whoop, drum roll please. Help me in welcoming Dr. Vernessa Roberts.
I'm like,
Ah,
I'm cracking up over here. I'm thinking in my head,
ah,
like, I need you to do all my introductions. I'm just gonna take you with
hell
me
yeah, girl.
everywhere.
I would love to it. Hey, Lacey. Lacey Brooke has joined us. She is fabulous. Wow,
Hey.
it is such an honor. It's such an honor to have you here, Dr. Vernessa Roberts. And I'm just so excited to talk with you. And I'm so intrigued and interested in your background and all that you do, with your therapy practice for others. And, you know, what I love about my guest is they're like what beats passionately from their heart and soul, and like the why that you chose of all the careers, of all the things that you could be doing, you chose to become a family, and marriage, a therapist. And it's like, what happened in your life? What experiences have you persevered through? Epiphanic moments have you had that led you to down this path to want to do this for others?
hmm Yeah, it's interesting because it took me a little while to even get to this path. And I say it just
Mhm.
things aligned, I guess. Because originally when I first started school and picking a major in things, I was majoring in not even psychology. And so I was big in like kinesiology and I still like that stuff, but I was just too sensitive to get into like athletic training like I wanted. Like
Mhm,
I was
mhm.
like, I can't even watch an injury replay. How am I going to be
Oh,
an athletic
I
trainer? Um, and so,
oh,
my second year in college, I actually took a psychology of women's class and fell in love with that.
mm,
And so in that moment, I was like, I want to get into psychology. And what really drew me to the relationship aspect was, it's a psychology of women's class, such an amazing class, very intricate. And it really had me thinking about, just the gender differences. And it's
mhm,
like with all these differences that exist individually within us, it's interesting how we can still show up to our intimate relationships or even family
mhm,
relationships and still coexist when we all possess so many differences. But then it got me thinking too that, oh, well, obviously, with all these differences that we possess individually, it's going to start creating some conflict within our
mhm,
relationships also, family systems, intimate relationships, friendships also. So I
mhm,
started diving into, okay, what path will that take me to? And that's when I saw the MFT, just randomly looking online. And so, yeah, through a lot of just past experiences and my journey too, I've learned that a lot of our damage, a lot of our wounds that we have, they start from our relationships with others, right? If this is a family
Mhm.
relationship that we have, a lot of issues stem from our family conflicts. If it's school relationships we have, I've worked with tons of individuals who experience bullying, and that
Mhm.
still sticks with them into adult
Mhm.
years. But yeah, if you think about it, it's like the wounds that we have, they exist within our relationships, and that's where they stem from. And so in order to heal that, we can really only heal those things through continued relationships, because as humans we're just wired to connect and relate to others. And so I was really passionate about being a part of that. We can't function individually, and on a societal level we can't function societally, which is some of our issues now, if we're not repairing these relationships with others and existing in
Mhm.
relationships in a more healthy way, that's just conducive to us and those around us. And so I wanted to be a big piece in helping individuals repair their relationship,
Mhm.
one with their self,
Mm.
and then that can help repair their relationships with those around them.
Right. So when you're saying like for instance, let's take bullying. I
Mhm,
was, subject to bullying when I was a little kid as well. And, you know, hurt people, happy people don't. You've heard that
mhm,
saying.
mhm,
And when would you like when you're counseling, I guess like when you're working with a family and say their child is being bullied, um, share some of what you are sharing with the child about, like, the empowerment of themselves
mhm, yeah.
and dealing with the bully.
Yeah, definitely. And so, of course, first I'll, help normalize some of their feelings, kind of process, what feelings are coming up for you with this bullying. But then, yeah, it's a lot of this journey of self work too, of, well, what are your thoughts that you have about yourself? And
Mhm,
sometimes these thoughts are negative, and sometimes they think some positive thoughts. And so, if they are saying, yeah, well, negative thing A, B, and C, I try to help reframe that for them of,
mhm,
well, I wonder what some positive things you're thinking about yourself. And then we'll
mhm,
go into some of those positive things. But I'm trying to help them create this new narrative around themselves, and the narrative that this bully has of them, how can we help shift that? Because that's their
mhm.
narrative of you, and that narrative exists for
Right.
various reasons, and really the reasons it's on that individual. So how can we shift this
Abso-freaking-lutely.
narrative with you, so you're not internalizing this person's narrative of
Mhm,
you and now taking that into your life, and then taking that into adulthood, which often
mhm,
happens, right? And that's the same with bullying in schools. That's the same with household mistreatment, where whatever narrative was in the
mhm,
household, now
mhm.
individuals are taking that narrative.
Right.
And
You
that's where a lot of that like inner child work comes in.
Right. So I have a question. In also working with the bullied, are you also addressing, like, is there ever a time when you're working with a child who is being bullied? Obviously, they know who's bullying them and they tell you. Is there ever, I don't know how ethical or unethical or professional or unprofessional this would be, but clearly, it's like I said, hurt people. So the bully is being bullied somehow, or the bully is really the one who possesses such a lack of feeling of self-worth and is casting that onto someone that they feel is that they can easily manipulate, not
Mhm.
beneath them, but they can easily manipulate. And so is there ever a time when the bully is encountered or should I say worked with, like call the school and that Bobby's bullying Tommy, and we need to talk with Bobby's parents. We need to figure out why is Bob, because Bobby's the one who is really hurting,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. No, definitely.
Does
Yeah.
that ever happen?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's like brings in the whole systemic level to a lot of this. And so on one hand, so it's twofold because one, I'll see adults in my practice. So now I'm seeing
Hmm.
people after the fact, right? That are still maybe dealing
Hmm.
with some of these things or just remember them. But there was a time, my first few years of practicing, that I was working with all kids, one setting actually in the school system. So that was really nice because you're a little more involved. And so it gets tricky. What we'll have to do is kind of, unless it's something very extreme, where the safety of a kid is at risk, then we'll
Right.
maybe have to be a little more proactive. But in the therapist realm, we still have this level of confidentiality. And so it's difficult for us to, go
Right.
expose that, well, so and so said this in this session about this person, because then it's breaking the confidentiality that I have with the client. But
Right.
the avocation, or advocating for them would be, this exists with the client, or child. If they're open to us sharing that with their parents, sometimes maybe they're not, but then sharing it with parents and then helping the parents go advocate at the school, or whoever they want to share that with, about some of these issues that are going on. And then maybe they can discuss with that student's parent, that maybe you should seek out some help also. What are ways that we can kind of repair this? And so that's the way we kind of have to do it to still maintain that confidentiality. But then with the
Hmm.
hope of still seeing some change with that. Because that brings to the point too of, a lot of the work I do, I'm more of like a, liberating within my practice. And so it's not that the individual is the problem. So, like you said, this child that's being bullied, they're not
Right.
the issue. It's, it's this other
Right.
issue. And we see that a lot in
Mhm.
society. It's like us as individuals, we might be
Yep.
struggling with some things, but we're
Hmm.
struggling because we live in this larger society that doesn't set us up for success. And so I always try to externalize things of, it's not us, it's society, it's your toxic
The
workplace.
systems. The
Mhm,
systems.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Definitely, definitely.
Um, you and I want to get your opinion on this. Several years ago, I had this epiphanic moment. I mean, God, it's might have been 2005. I think it was like 2005, a long time ago. I had this epiphanic moment that there needed to be a curriculum taught in schools, all schools around the entire world, every school system, just, spelling, arithmetic, history, science, nap time, PE, and lunch. Okay, well, then we also have a curriculum about, and I guess, you don't want it like is it self-development or maybe personal development, some sort
Mhm,
of, that's teaching ourselves like life skills, but not just about life skills, but about like, because real life skills, like your podcast, authentic. It's all about being
mhm,
authentic. How
mhm,
you're developing and cultivating that self-worth, because the more
mhm,
self-worth you have, the more likely you are to operate from a place of authenticity, hence integrity in most all situations. So
mhm,
alongside spelling, arithmetic, math, and PE, every an hour a day, every single day from kindergarten to 12th grade, you know, you're learning about the benefits of and at the end of the day, it's cultivating self-worth. It's
mhm,
cultivating self-awareness,
mhm,
self-knowledge, and like I said, creating authenticity. So I really think that we'd have a lot more children growing into adults who were mindful and intentional and acknowledge the fact that they can take personal responsibility and create. We are the creators of our lives. What do
mhm.
you think about something like that, and how could that come about?
Yeah, no, that would be essential for sure. And yeah, the how would be difficult because that goes to the system again,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
living within this kind of, well, not kind of, it is a capitalistic society, right? It's like then they're gonna start weighing, okay, we can only, with our funding, how the schools run, we can only provide so much instruction within a day. And you're talking about self exploration, and they're probably going to say,
Mhm.
nope, that's not part of our plan, right? We don't have time
So
for
that's
that.
yeah, that's why I was saying, let's not call it something bougie, like like it's like it'd be life skills, or it would
Yeah.
have to be a term in which it didn't sound um something. It would have to be, I guess, you know, math, arithmetic. It'd have to
Yeah.
sound like that, but it would be the math and the arithmetic of yourself. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah. Right.
personal development, self-awareness. Obviously, that's too bougie, I guess, or woo woo. But it's like, but no, real life skills need to be taught, and this stuff. If more people, if this shit was implemented into, because again, like we don't know, there's unfathomable, and I'm sure in your practice especially, you
Mhm.
see
Mhm.
people coming in that have lived through unfathomable, just gut-wrenching shit. So,
Yeah.
okay, regardless of, I see mama beat me, or my daddy's an alcoholic, or my mom's a drug addict, or I don't have parents, or I live in an orphanage, or, when I go to school for an hour a day, I'm learning that, holy, like, my worth and value.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
yeah, super important. And it's like, and again, that's the systems issues where I want to just be able to call it like the life skills, self exploration, because that's what it is. But a system error is that, yeah, we have to try to sugarcoat what this is.
Mhm.
But yeah, that would be so important because it's very interesting. Like, if you think about it, the self development phase, it's continuous, but when we're
Yes.
really gaining this sense of self, it's like adolescent years, right? The
Mhm, mhm.
teenage years. That's what those phases are all about. And so to not have anything, unless kids are having these conversations with their parents, but to not have anything that helps validate this developmental phase that kids, adolescents, and teens are in, it just doesn't make sense and it doesn't set us up for success. And I
Right.
think that's now why I see, and this is a question, kind of discussed this on one of my launch episodes for the podcast. But I always talk about this question to clients because no matter what age, they can be 20 something, 30, 40, 50, or 60. I ask the simple question of, who are you?
Mhm.
And no one seems to know the answer,
Yeah.
right? And by no fault of their own.
Exactly.
But soon people start saying like what they do, right? And I go into this long speech of like, no, who we are is not what we do.
Exactly.
It's, the characteristics, traits that make up who we are that no one can take away. But it's common for most of us not to be able to answer that. And there's maybe
Mhm,
various reasons to that, but gosh, how powerful would that be if we start
mhm.
that self exploration for these middle school
Yes,
students and
yes,
start having them
yes.
think about, who am I? I don't know. I'm learning. But then in high school, they start reflecting on it more. And then as they enter college, trade school, or even if they enter the
Mhm,
workforce, you
mhm.
start to have that thought because you've been able to do this constant self reflection.
Yes.
But for most of us, we only get that self reflection if you're proactive in it yourself, reading books, looking up
Yep.
videos, or if you decide to go to therapy, right? But why not start
Mhm.
that early on in the schools and you're not having to pay? I mean, I want people to come to therapy,
Yeah,
but then
exactly, exactly.
it might save people
We'd be out
later
of a
having to
job.
pay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
if
I
everybody
don't
was
know.
happy and living their best lives, we wouldn't be here. Well, but we'd be doing
Exactly.
something else more
Yeah.
fabulous. We'd be just doing something else to make a big impact in the world.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
definitely,
I
definitely.
think about that often, and, to that point, what you were saying is so many people like, who are you? Or like, what do you like about yourself? Or what's
Mhm.
awesome about you? I was at a doTERRA oil class, and it was, me and like 8 other ladies. And, we were all sitting around the table, and the facilitator was, was going, it was a fun thing. And one of the fun exercises exercises in the booklet that we were all given was write down 7 things that you like about
Mhm.
yourself. Well, because I've been doing this since I was, 20, I was like, I just started write, oh yeah, this, this, because I've been doing this. I've been reading those types of books. I've been taking those types of courses. It's been my lifelong journey. The other women, like I happen to look up and they're all just sitting there and they're just
Mhm.
looking around at each other like they could, and the facilitator finally goes, "Yeah, it's hard to know what we like about ourselves." And I just remember thinking, "Wow, this is so sad."
Mhm.
It's so sad, and it's I am no more fabulous than anybody, but it's just that I've been on this journey. I know I've practiced the tools. I know, through this diligent effort, and anybody can have access to that. Anybody and
Mhm.
everybody's worthy of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right, it
Definitely.
should start, and that's what I tell my nephews who are like 19 and 21, start now. Start now with these specific types of habits. Start now asking yourself the important questions of who I am, what do I like about myself, what do I love doing, what am I passionate about? What are your interests, what are your skills, what are you not as good at? And instead of doing what you think you should be doing, what do you want to do? And you must
Mhm.
discover.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I love that.
Yeah, and what's disheartening too about that is, like you said, the question of what do you like about yourself, strengths.
Mhm.
Sometimes people are thinking like, I don't know. Ask them the opposite question of what don't you like about yourself? What do you want different? Okay, okay, I can make the list. And it's like, wait a second.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have to stop that. Right?
Abso-freaking-lutely, and every single one of those women in that room could have sat there and about the other person and written down 10, 20 things. "Oh, you're amazing at this. You're awesome,"
Mhm.
but it's like when it comes to ourselves, so many people just don't know thyself. Know
Mhm.
thyself. Knowing thyself
Mhm.
is the greatest wisdom. I've seen that
Mhm.
meme. It's like this big lion.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I like that piece of the early intervention, even how you said what you're speaking to your nephews about, because in this day and age, we need it more than ever.
Yeah.
When, I know I'm still younger, I probably look younger than I am, but like I grew up in a time where we didn't have all this stuff. Like MySpace was just coming out,
Right.
like, and that was like our social media, which is nothing compared to the animal
Mhm.
of social media that we have now. And so, with all this
Oh, yeah, I remember
information that we
MySpace.
see, it's just like we need this early intervention now more than ever, where we have adolescents, teens, early adults really questioning, like, yeah, who am I outside of this like social media world that I'm exposed to?
Right, right, constantly, because, there's all these new, mental impairments being developed with, you're constantly comparing yourself to others
Mhm.
that you see who in a snap looks like their life is perfect or log everything is
Mhm.
just woo, you know, and
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, with that, like, when you also do family and marriage, and
Mhm.
what what are you seeing? Like, what are some of your advice, and share with us, like, how you help couples? Like, what's something they can become aware of that helps their relationship?
Yeah, definitely. And so, the biggest thing with couples is always like communication, right? And I'm
Mhm.
always trying to break that down of what's that look like for you. But when we are able to break it down, this kind of ties into what we discussed at the beginning, right? It's
Mhm.
this individual who maybe hasn't fully healed from some past relationship wounds. This can be
Mhm.
a relationship wound from an ex partnership or relationship. And a lot of times these are just wounds from the family system. And
Right.
sometimes it doesn't even have to be like wounds from family systems. A lot of people actually have great childhood. Parents were great.
Yeah.
Things weren't perfect. But there's still some narrative that individuals take from the household. There's still some role that you were in that household, if you acknowledge that or not. And so
Mhm.
this roles, this narrative, this way of communicating that you've learned from family that you maybe thought like, no, that's normal to communicate that way. And then you experience other relationships and you realize that, oh, that's not how people communicate. We're not yelling at the top
Right.
of our lungs to be heard. And so there's a lot that we're taking into the relationships. And it's difficult for us to realize that you don't have to be in that role anymore, right? This person that you're sharing this space with, they're not your enemy, right? I know you grew up having
Mhm.
to defend yourself, having to feel a certain way about yourself, having to survive. I think that's a big piece too. A lot of us are still in survival mode. And so it's learning how to
Mhm.
release some of this almost baggage that we bring into the relationship.
Mhm.
And I tell couples, like, we're not serving anyone if we're in the boxing ring in our
Right.
relationship. Like, what? That's not going to be helpful. Or if we're in the courtroom, because a lot of my
Mhm.
couples just like to pretty much prove why they're right and why the other person is wrong. And I
Yeah.
said, you're both wrong. And so we're in a lose lose. And so that's not the solution. And so I think it's just learning these new ways of communicating because, again, that's something that can go into our life skills, and self-awareness
Yes.
is proper communication in interpersonal
Mhm.
relationships. We're not learning a lot of that. We're learning it through our experiences, and that can be
Mhm.
helpful. But now sharing this space, sharing a life with someone, we have to learn, okay, what's helpful about my communication and what's not so helpful. And the way I communicate could be right, wrong, or in the middle, but it's not superior to how my partner communicates because theirs could be right, wrong, or also in the middle. And so,
Mhm.
how do we find this middle ground? And most importantly, how do we make space for each other also? So that's a big piece of it. I could go on and on with a lot of the things that we discuss. But that is a big piece of just bringing some of these old things consciously or unconsciously into our
Mhm.
relationships.
Right. And all adult relationships. It's
Mhm.
easy to point the finger and say, "You did this to me," or "You're wrong for this." And if you've had past trauma experiences that you haven't processed or healed, then or have at least a different perspective of looking at the traumatic experience, then you're going to keep repeating the same types of behaviors, you're going to keep
Mhm.
eliciting the same types of responses and attracting the same types of relationships. I mean, I don't know
Mhm.
if you've ever seen the movie documentary What the Bleep Do We Know?
Mm, mm-mm.
But, in the beginning, one of the statements is in a world of infinite possibilities, why do we, keep recreating the same situation, the same jobs, the same
Mhm.
relationships, the
Yeah.
same old over and over again? It's because we're locked in this paradigm of
Mhm.
uh, of trance. We're entranced in this paradigm that all we need to do is have an around, okay, if I want to shift that and attract something different, then my mindset has to be different, hence my actions, and then I attract someone or something that's
Mhm.
different.
Definitely. Starts with that
Yeah.
awareness piece,
Mhm.
right? Which we're
Yeah.
talking about implementing. We'll try to implement it somehow into these school systems. But yeah, that awareness
Yes.
of even knowing that that exists. But yeah, and I'll be interested in that documentary because it is, you think about like how there's so many possibilities of things
Mhm.
we attract, the people that we end up in relationship with, and somehow it's like the same pattern, the same type of
Yep.
people. And until we have that awareness that our bodies are going to protect us because our bodies are meant for
Mm.
survival.
Mhm.
And sometimes survival for us means what's familiar and safe. And unfortunately, sometimes what's familiar and safe is this recurring pattern from our family dynamic
Yeah.
that's not setting us
Mhm.
up for healthy relationships, but it's really familiar. And so,
Mhm.
even if it's unsafe in a lot of ways, it's actually really safe for
Right.
me. And that's a difficult part of breaking free from, like, no, I think if you're not, and I'll see this a lot where, people are maybe dating or something, and they're always drawn to this type, the person that's emotionally unavailable, right? And they think, why do I
Mhm.
keep having people that are emotionally unavailable? And we have to go through this pattern of like what relationships mean to you. And there's probably a reason that you're choosing who's emotionally unavailable because you actually truly don't want a commitment, but you've talked yourself into thinking that you want a commitment.
Mhm.
But choosing someone's emotionally unavailable, you keep that
Mhm.
cycle and safety for yourself. And so and then they'll say, "Well, I met this person, but like, but I don't like them off the bat. It feels too weird. I'm uncomfortable." And it's like, well, let's
Mhm.
lean into that because one, is it safety red flag? You feel uncomfortable, or is it because you realize that this person actually might be available for me? This
Mhm.
person's actually treating me a little different, but it's going to feel uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar to you. But
Yeah.
unfamiliar is a lot of times a good thing within some of
Mhm.
our relationships.
Absolutely. Louis Ajaja, I don't know if you've ever seen her TED Talk where she talks about you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Mhm.
because that's where growth happens.
Mhm.
And Lacey and I were just talking about this yesterday. Is when speaking about like these own paradigms that we're locked in. For instance, we're talking about the shadow. The shadow. We all have dark and light aspects of ourselves, and it's about going into that shadow and realizing why the shadow's there, thanking
Mhm.
it, and then going, okay, but I no longer want to, like, the shadow of self sabotage. We both were
Mhm.
talking yesterday. We're like the shadow of self sabotage, and so why am I self sabotaging? Because maybe in a long time ago, it fight or flight, like you mentioned earlier. It protected us, it kept us safe. But in
Mhm.
order, so life isn't about, guys. It's not about being safe. I did a post the other day, and like I get, I have a lot of fear. I mean, I put myself out there, and the more and more I, you know, do these self-awareness and personal me, myself, and I journeys, the more and more and more access I have to keep, going bigger and bigger and bigger. But it's scary. It's scary. It's scary. And sometimes, before I go live, I'll just like feel like, no, just wait till tomorrow. Just wait till Thursday at this time because that's just a better time. No, and then I'm like, fuck it. And I just do it. You got to jump in, because I would rather look back on my life when I'm a
Mhm.
2,000 years old
Yeah.
and go, wow, I'm so glad that I did do that. I'm so glad that I did take that risk. I'm so glad that I did put myself out there. I'm so glad that I did say that and I did open my heart and I did share that, because if I hadn't, then I would regret, because you never know. Maybe you do something and it doesn't turn out the way that you thought it was, but it
Mhm.
still grew you and it opened you up to a new possibility to do something different.
Mhm. Definitely. And you
Yeah.
tried, right? You made that effort.
Yes.
Yeah, that's huge. Similar to me. Everything that, I mean, most things that I've started to do, I'm always extremely uncomfortable. I know
Hmm.
that, if an opportunity presents itself or if I have a thought and my first thought is, no, no, don't do that. I sit and reflect and realize that actually I have to do this because the no, no
Hmm.
is that fear, right? And so even with
Hmm.
I'm like you said, I'm a professor, and so it's like I don't even like talking in front of people that much. And so the podcast was really different. But a
Yeah.
professor, where you're in front of the class, and
Hmm.
but I love that work, and so my love for it and my passion for it always just overrides any anxiety. And the same how you described even before a live, you're still nervous. Yeah, going into class, sometimes I'm still like anxious to talk and stuff, and that's okay, right? Doing the
Mhm,
podcast was a new venture, and I've had that thought for a couple of years now. And there's always something, right? Well, I'm busy, or there's
mhm,
enough podcast out there. Who wants to hear what, right? And I'm trying to talk myself out of it because
mhm.
that's keeping me safe, right? But this year I had to make that commitment of, okay, this is going to be anxiety
Yeah,
provoking. I'm fearful, but why not?
right. Well, think about it. We're always told, how long have we heard, "Better safe than sorry,"
Mhm.
you know? where it's I mean, that's ingrained. There's so many subconscious statements that we've all grown up with that, again, keep us stifled in a specific paradigm, and it limits
Mhm.
us and limits what we have access to and what we're able to do. And I love how you said that about, like, you know how like, who wants to hear what I have to say? Somebody wants to hear what you have to say. So you know, even if it's one life that you have made a positive impact, that one life, you have no idea what then maybe that one life affects a million lives with what they take
Mhm.
from what you empowered in them by you sharing your authenticity.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. And it's normal and common. Again, this ties to our need to stay safe. A lot of us
Hmm.
greatly fear rejection, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously I'm not putting myself out there because that
Hmm.
rejection is a huge piece. But I always tell people, it is that question of what if I'm rejected? What if I'm not liked? I always tell
Yeah.
them, okay, what's the opposite question that you need to start reflect on? But what if people
Love
do
that.
resonate with it?
Hmm.
What if you're not rejected by all? You might be rejected by some. We're in this lose-lose society where like
Oh yeah.
a
Cancel
lot of people are
culture.
going to
Yeah.
hate, yeah, right? A lot of people are going to dislike and hate you and a lot of people will like you. And it's just like, still do it.
Hmm.
You're not going to please everyone and this ties into that authentic being, and Brené Brown says this a lot too of like we can't step into our authentic self without the risk of disappointing others. It's just a piece of it. And so being able to accept that I might disappoint some others, some people might not like what I have to say. And
Hmm.
that's okay because some will.
Yeah. And but there's a mad respect that is given to you for saying it. And
Mhm.
so oftentimes, I mean, I have people saying the same thing. I don't agree with everything you say, Stephanie, but I respect you for saying it.
Mhm.
And, and it's just like, I wish I had the balls to do. I wish I had the gumption. Well, you can. You
Mhm.
can, you know, if anything's possible for anyone, anything is possible for anyone, but you have to
Mhm.
have that right mindset and heart set. And that's why what you're doing with your podcast is so beautiful. So
Thank
talk
you.
about the podcast. All things
Okay.
authentic.
Yes, all things authentic. And so I got into, just a passion for authenticity, self-worth, shame, and really a lot of that stemmed from my own journey. And I kind of share this in one of the beginning episodes because it was when I was in grad school, specifically the doctorate program though. Difficult program. And I loved a lot of parts of it, but it was a program that you have to pass things, right? It's it's hard work.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah.
different exams, dissertation proposal, all these things. And so it wasn't until I was in that program where I'm like, I have a lot of feelings coming up. And I couldn't name those feelings at first, but
Hmm.
these intense feelings of like not being smart enough, not being good enough, being
Yeah.
embarrassed if I don't pass something, where it really was more than embarrassment. It was just that shame, right? Of like, okay, this proves that I'm not good enough. And now I have to share
Right.
this with others. And so that's where my own journey came. Excuse me. And that's when I got into reading like some of Brene Brown's work on shame, and, it was
She's
just
amazing.
hitting right on, yes, of what I experienced. And so I'm like, oh, wait, this is a thing. So now I have a name to it. Oh, shame. Okay, what's shame? Oh, perfectionism. I know what that is, but oh, that is me. Right. And so, like she always says, I'm still this recovering perfectionist. And so that's why I got into this specific work of like shame, self worth, authenticity, because I realized all the clients that were coming into my office, individuals, couples, it doesn't matter what people were coming in for, depression,
Hmm.
anxiety, stress management.
Hmm.
There's still this foundation of us struggling with our sense of self, our self worth, and being able to step into our authentic self. And so that always is just a passion area for me because I know it touches everyone, right? It doesn't discriminate with
Yes.
race,
Mm-mm,
ethnicity, age, gender, everyone touches on this. And so
mm-mm,
I wanted this space
mhm.
outside of my therapy room because with the therapy room, I can only serve one client an hour, right? And so very limited. I try to serve as many as I can, but it's difficult. I wanted a bigger platform to be able to reach people that can't come step into my office or can't step into any therapist office.
Right,
Um, and when it comes to authenticity, I wanted to be able to make it broad enough where it relates and for people to know that there's so many different aspects that impact our authenticity. Hence, all things authentic, because I've had guests come and talk about various things. We know trauma's a huge one too, but tomorrow I have an episode dropping about intuition. Um, what else have I had? The inner child work we've discussed. So many different topics still relate to
mhm,
our authenticity, right? I had one
absolutely.
on someone talking about ADHD, and you would think like,
Mhm,
what's that have to do with authenticity? Huge part. When people are,
mhm,
have these disorders that we diagnose them with, there's this huge masking that goes on. And a lot of us kind of mask for various
right,
reasons. But the more we're masking, the more we're covering up that authentic self. And
mhm,
so I just wanted a platform to reveal these things, but most importantly, to inspire others. My guests come on and they're so courageous, sharing their stories, experiences, and just being open and vulnerable. And I want a
yeah,
space for that so we can normalize
yes,
this. There's a lot of things going on in our
absolutely.
society that we keep a secret, and that's all shame, right? I can't expose that I
Mhm,
feel this shame. I have to hide.
right,
No, let's
right.
actually talk about these feelings out loud because then the same way I read Brene Brown's book and I said, "Oh wait, me too." Like I can start exploring this. I can start talking about it. That's what I want people to feel when they listen to these episodes of like, "Oh wait, I'm not alone." Like, "Oh, me too. I'm glad they named that." Or that's what the name of that is. That's what I experienced. Let me explore
Yeah,
this. And now let me be inspired to go share this with my friend because now I feel that I can be right. And that's what the purpose of this show is empowered conversation. Now I'm empowered to go have this conversation with someone else and not feel that shame around it. Right.
right.
And then hopefully it's a trickle effect.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Have you ever heard of the hierarchical or the hierarchy of emotions?
Mm-mm.
Shame is, I think, the bottom emotion,
Oh
the
wow.
like, the worst emotion,
Oh
or
wow.
not worst. It's
Makes
about
sense though.
vibration.
Yeah.
It's called the
Yeah.
higher I think it's the hierarchy of, I'm almost positive, like, hierarchy of emotions, and it's like shame and then, the highest vibration, so that's the lowest of
Okay.
vibration that we can feel, to the highest of vibration, and
Let me
let's
Google it
see.
now so I'll have it to hierarchy.
Let me think here. Powerlessness, guilt, hatred.
I think I've heard
Actually,
it.
I was let's see, guilt, hatred,
Mm.
anger, doubt. I know shame. Boredom is like in the middle, the complete middle. There's frustration and pain. So I know that I think shame, it's shame. It is. It's shame. And then guilt is a higher vibration than shame. And then
Okay.
hatred is a higher vibration than guilt. And then anger. So it's like if you're going from shame and you're all the way up at anger, you've
Mhm.
actually increased the level of your vibration. And then the highest is joy, and the highest is freedom.
I see
So
that, yeah.
freedom to be your authentic self. Yes. Yep.
I like that. Yeah, I hadn't even so
Mhm.
it's the vibration hierarchy of feelings. Okay, and I see
Yeah.
I see you said boredom. Yeah, what I'm looking at, it does a spiral, upward spiral and a downward
Mhm.
spiral. Nice. I like
Mhm.
that.
So when
Yes.
like I know and in coaching people who have severe trauma and a lot
Mhm.
of that and then they're so ashamed. And
Mhm.
it's again, it's not okay, we're just gonna get you right to joy. No. we gotta work. It's a step by step. If we get you from shame, and then by the end of next week, you're feeling, at anger, you're still that, that hurts, but it's still
Mhm.
you are, well, damn, I don't feel shame anymore. I don't
Mhm.
feel apathy anymore,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not to as big of a degree as I experienced it before, right? I think with shame and a lot of these like negative feelings, even our feelings of self-worth, I always tell clients like it's gonna be this journey, right? Will you never feel shame again? No, I wish I
Yeah.
can tell you that, but right, it's just an emotion that sometimes can be helpful for us in moderation, right? If there's a specific reason
Yeah.
for it, it's helping us. But it's like, especially the world we're in now, there's constantly something each day that's going to threaten shame for you or threaten your sense of self. There's so much in the world that wants to tell us, nope, you're not enough, or this is why this person's better than you. It's what social media does to a lot
Mhm.
of people. And so it's like we have to almost have this protection, this armor for us each day when we step out into the world to know that, oh, for a quick second, I felt, oh, look what this person's doing. Look at this person's podcast and what. And then I reel myself back in of like, oh, but that's okay, right?
Mhm,
Good for
mhm.
them. Doesn't make me any less than. I'm not going to go in
No.
this spiral of like, I'm not worthy, not good enough. And so the
Mm,
shame will be there, but can we manage it? And so it's not debilitating for
mhm.
us because
And
it can become debilitating.
sometimes it's well there, so when you're looking at somebody and what they're doing with their podcast or their therapy practice, and you're on yourself comparing, it's like, whoa, 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 and that's like, oh, whoa, 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 there's no reason for me to compare myself. Maybe I need to up my game, or maybe I need to take action on something that I have been inhibiting myself from taking action, and then I'm playing at the level or assume that they're playing at. So sometimes
Hmm.
that comparison, especially when others, are doing the similar things, it's like, "Oh, that
Hmm.
they're keeping me on my game."
Mhm,
You know, I
mhm,
I need to take action on what I haven't, I've been putting off and not taking action on. And once I take that action, it's like, and then again, and then there's that rise of emotion, like you feel good and you feel empowered and self-powerful.
mhm. Definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's nice to be
Yeah.
motivated by others and what we
Mhm.
see around us. I always say, we still have to decipher between the internal motivation versus external. Internal
Right.
is, I see that, and actually, this has been something I really want, or this has always been something I want. I'm motivated for this. I want it for myself. That external motivation, we don't want to operate in that because
Right.
that's, oh, they're doing this, so I need to do this, or this is what I'm expected to do, or what I'm supposed to do,
Right.
or well, what will they think if I don't do this? So let me just do it for them. And I'll see that a lot where people get to these high places. I worked with people who are doctors, maybe lawyers, and they're just like, it's nice, but I'm not even happy. And it's like, well, was this ever your vision for
Right.
yourself? And they're like, not really. It was kind of just expected of me. I was always, smart. People said I should do medical school. And so I did it. And here I am. But there's no fulfillment with it because it was someone else's expectation for you and not your own. So that's just important to sit with too, that internal versus external motivation.
And even someone at that level in their life can go, "Okay, you know what? Boom. I don't wanna be a doctor or a lawyer or an a robotic engineer or whatever. I'm just spouting off,
Uh-huh.
CEO of the biggest company in the world. I wanna go
Yeah.
backpack across Europe, and I wanna start a restaurant, and I wanna make food for people, and I wanna stand on stage and make people laugh,
Hmm.
or I wanna make arts and crafts, or maybe I do love being an accountant. And,
Hmm.
but outside of being an accountant, I go hiking, I do all this stuff. I have all these passions that I exercise in my life. So my life is still, because you can be an accountant, you can be a doctor, you can be a janitor field. you know?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's like, what are you doing? It's like you said earlier when you ask, "Oh, so who are you?" "Oh, well,
Mhm.
I do this for work. I do that." It's always like, "So what do you do?" And that usually it's like the question is, "What do you do?" "Well,
Mhm.
I'm a family and marriage therapist." I mean, and
Yeah.
it's easy to, I'm a mindset and worthiness coach instead of
Mhm.
but we all it's like our go-to, and when people like, I would really like to know who you are, you know?
Yeah, yeah, such a loaded question. Yeah, it's funny we discussed that in one of the classes I teach is a career counseling class, and so we actually discussed the layers to that of like, why does this question exist? And then it's like almost a status thing and a respect thing.
Mhm.
But that like brings up a lot of shame for people too, because some people can say, "Oh, I do right? If I'm a therapist, usually it's a good response to that. Or sometimes it's something silly of like, "Oh, are you reading my mind?" And it's like, "Huh? That's
Oh,
not."
yeah,
Or it's like, "What?"
like, "No,
Um,
but
yeah,
maybe
so
I
it's
am,
like
but maybe I am." Yeah.
it's like, no. But if people aren't, if they feel some shame about that response, it's interesting the shame that that question can bring people if it's a career that they don't think is satisfactory to
Right,
society, right? If you're just
right.
stating that, oh, I work at this store, or I work at a coffee shop, and it's like, be proud of that job that you're in,
Yeah,
right? Like you're doing
yes.
something, and you maybe want to do that long term, great. Or you don't want to do it long term, and that's fine too. But it's interesting, even questions like that bring up this shame for individuals that
Mhm.
I'm not doing
Right.
enough compared to what society expects. And this concept of success, that's
Mhm.
personal, right? Forget what society
Yes.
thinks is successful. Forget what your family thinks is successful. I know it's difficult sitting in
Yes.
that, knowing that my family doesn't think I'm successful. And that's okay. You can kind of reflect on that and hopefully process that. But forget what other people think is successful. What does success look like for you? And I like that spiral. Like you said, the top of it is freedom. So, what's your
Mhm.
freedom look like?
Yeah.
Right.
And I have the saying, and I've seen it before, "Live your life caring what other people think, and you're their prisoner."
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that hierarchy of emotions is the freedom, and there
Mm-hmm.
is freedom, and I remember saying this on your podcast the other day that there's such an amazing amount of freedom that comes with being able to be authentic,
Mm-hmm.
and being authentic is, again, you're comfortable being yourself,
Mm-hmm.
is that there's a freedom in that comfortability with, like, I don't give a rat's ass what people think. I
Mm-hmm.
love me, I like me, so I'm gonna be me. Who else am I gonna be?
Mhm, definitely. Yeah, I had posted a quote saying something along the lines of, authenticity is, yeah, the ability to be yourself, but also the courage of letting other people see who you truly are, right? It's a courageous act because a lot of us operate in,
Yes.
wait, if I expose this part of myself, will they still accept me? Will they still like
Right.
me? Which is where that masking comes in, right? Of I'll mask and be who I think is expected of me, because that's much better than this abandonment that most of
Mhm.
us fear, right? But yeah, the courage to let others see you and know that some
Yes.
will love that in you
I
and some
have
might not.
mad. Yeah, exactly. And you know the Dr. Seuss saying is like those who mind don't matter. Those who matter won't mind. And
Mhm.
when you also sing like the sayings of like when I stood into my power and I really started being my authentic self, it's amazing who fell away, but then also who I attracted. So
Mhm.
so people, you're right, might fall away from you. A lot of some people because it's only because not because they don't like you, it's because
Mhm.
of how they feel uncomfortable. So rather than so when you're losing people, you're creating space for others
Mhm.
that resonate with this new way of being and showing up. And you're going to again attract, like we were talking about earlier, like especially with romantic relationships. Why am I attracting the abuser, or why am I attracting the guy or the girl, guy or girl, who is aloof and uninterested? It's because you're
Mhm.
resonating with a specific vibe that's
Mhm.
attracting that. So now with this new way of being, you're attracting people and situations that are more in alignment with
Mhm.
your
Definitely.
authenticity.
Yes. I think we maybe discussed it when we recorded that, still this authenticity is being true to ourselves, but there's still like a mindfulness and thoughtfulness, right? And so it's difficult for me to
Exactly.
to show up in some of my relationships like this is my authentic self, and that means that I'm gonna treat you any way I want, right? And it's like I think people
No,
like
no,
get this
no.
misperception that it's just like take me as I am. We're kind of, but
Yeah.
we have to be mindful and thoughtful of others. And
Mhm.
again, there's a lot of this inner child work, past dynamics that, or shadows, like you said, that, wait, that shadow actually makes me lash out on people.
Mhm.
And maybe that's part of my authentic self, but also it's part of a self that needs to be healed. Okay. And so I still can't
Yes.
continue to show up into relationships where I think it's okay to just lash out because, well, this is me, accept it when it's maybe hurtful to people, or you start to realize
Mhm.
that it's impacting your ability to have relationships with others. And
Right.
so sometimes there's still some aspects that need to be healed and worked through. And it still leaves this authentic version of
Mhm.
ourselves. But it has to be this authentic version that can still step into relationships with others without causing harm.
Right. Exactly. So
Mhm.
well put.
Yeah.
Not giving a rat's ass is one thing, but again, not at the expense of harming or hurting someone. Yeah.
Definitely,
That's
definitely.
yeah. Well, Vernessa, this has been a phenomenal, outstanding, empowered conversation.
I know so much. I'm like, I can talk
Yeah.
about this stuff
I know we could just
all
sit here for
day.
hours. I
I
know,
know.
I
I'm like,
know.
what else?
And we have Lacey was here, and I don't know if Lacey's still here, but she's so fabulous. And she was saying hello. And this was to you. She goes, right, Steph brings the damn energy. And she's like, hello, Dr. Vernessa. Thank you for being here. And
Aw.
yeah, it's been such an honor
Yes.
to have you here. Would like to share with my audience how can people get a hold of you and work with you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm based out of California. So for any California residents, you can check out my website, Dr. Vernessaroberts.com. And anyone can check that out. But for those wanting to work in a therapeutic way, I'm only licensed in California. But I do relationship coaching, and I kind of have this, very in-depth assessment that I do with couples. Really breaks down the relationship of strength areas, possible growth areas. And so there is a relationship coaching program that I offer, and that's for anywhere. So that's not bound to
Yeah.
California residents. And so if you would enjoy that, you can find that on the website. Also, I'm on Instagram at, again, Dr. Vernessa Roberts. I have a business Facebook page also would be the same, Dr. Vernessa Roberts. And then, of course, like Stephanie shared, I have the All Things Authentic podcast. You can find it on Apple, Google, Spotify, most of your listening platforms. And we drop new episodes each Thursday. So hopefully you can check it out.
Tomorrow, guys.
Yes.
So when I put in drvernessa.com, but it goes to YouTube. So any comments, and then once we're off the live, it won't even show up anymore. But drvernessa.com, if you want to come back under the broadcasts and share your links, so people can access, like you said, like even though you're licensed in Sacramento, maybe I would like to get some relationship advice, and I could
Mhm.
get the relationship coaching that you have
Mhm.
on your website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And so you need me to do something, you said? for
So,
the
when
website?
after the broadcast is over, because if you were to comment now, it would go straight to YouTube, and it would only be
Oh,
a live comment like Instagram. Once the Instagram Live's over, there you can't see the comments, which that makes no
okay.
sense. Like, that's what I love about Facebook. Um, it doesn't allow me to comment through StreamYard to take it to Facebook. So
Got
when
it.
the broadcast is over, you'll see where it's on my personal page in my
Mhm.
Frickin'licious and You group, and you
Okay.
can place the links to your website and how
Okay.
people can have all this
Sounds
access to
good.
you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Such a great conversation. I love this work that we're both doing,
Mhm.
really. And again, I think it aligns, and I think that's the biggest piece of knowing if you're in your authentic self is
Mhm.
the things you're doing, you feel good about it. It feels aligned, right? You can sit here
Mhm.
and talk about it for hours and hours. And so yeah, it's just feeling aligned with some of the choices you're making and the things that you're doing. And it's not the reality for everyone. Some of us just have to do things just to do things and kind of survive, provide for families. But hopefully, there's something even outside of the work or career that you
Right.
find that just aligns with you and makes you feel good and really hits to that authentic self.
Yeah, and gives you that sense of fulfillment in your life.
Mhm, mhm. And the
Yeah.
freedom now. I really like that hierarchy.
Free.
Oh, so great.
Well, guys, it has been wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining, and and with Dr. Vernessa and I, she is amazing. I love, like I
Oh,
said, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and out here helping people. She will post links to her website so you can find out how to work with her, and she's got like a couples package that you can access on her website. So but till next time, everyone, thank
thank
you for joining
you.
Empowered Conversations. And you stay right here. I'm
Hey.
just going to end the broadcast. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, guys.